everyone. Welcome to Process Pros. My name is Brian Reeb. Today, we're going to be talking about APIs, integrations, making sure that you think about how different systems and platforms within your organization interoperate. It's a big part of process management and automation, something that often ends up being a step 8 or 9 or 10 instead of a much higher, um, maybe 1, 2, or 3 on the consideration food and chain. That's what I want to get into today. Again, I'm Brian Reeb. I'm a technical marketing manager here at Nintex, and thankfully, I have two actual experts to talk about these types of things with me. So let's introduce both of them right now, starting with Katie.
Hey everyone, I'm Katie Kuhn. I'm a solution architect with Nintex.
Hey everybody, my name is Dan Burke. I am a pre-sales manager with Nintex. I've been with the company for about 7 years. Excited to chat with everyone today.
Perfect. Thanks for being here, both of you. I want to hit the ground running here, so let's start with what might seem like a basic question, but there are no basic questions. So, what are some common issues you see with businesses that have data in a variety of disparate systems?
No, I think that's a great question. I think one of the fun things is that as businesses grow, you typically see data just kind of floating to a bunch of different places, and you have the processes that are going to be kind of inextricably linked that require people to be able to understand what's happening in one segment as well as another. So. You might have like a SQL database that has all of your customer data or some just kind of home cooked solutions. You might have Salesforce where you're going to have like your actual like kind of CRM kind of customer tool, and then you might have like a different tool like Microsoft, like Exchange, some of those other tools there that you're trying to pull other data from, and just having data in all those different systems requires some sort of integration layer to really kind of be able to get these to interact. So one of the things that you kind of see as a problem with that is that you have a lot of companies that where it's I hate to use the cliche, but left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing because you have so many different locations where this information is stored. So really, what that does is that kind of opens up some opportunities and for some process automation or just even process mapping, like really kind of understanding where the data flows are and how things are kind of connecting to the to the kind of core process that you're trying to achieve and kind of business outcomes that you're looking to achieve. Beyond that, working with customers in a variety of different areas, we see where you might not even have like an API layer to be able to interact with these systems, and those are kind of those are really kind of some of the more fun solutions because if you don't have an API layer, then being able to access that kind of business critical data because typically these are systems that have been in production for 20, 30, 40 years and you need to be able to talk to that data because there's something critical there and that's why it's been in production for so long and hasn't been changed to a different system. So those types of solutions we typically see like an RPA, something along those lines where you might want to kind of get into the weeds on some of those pieces. Katie, did you have anything else that I'm missing there? Anything you wanted to kind of chime in on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So right, legacy, right? Like any sort of legacy system that you guys might have, that is going to be usually very expensive and time consuming to move. So some people really just don't want to deal with that right now. There's not really a good time to. But of course, they're also collecting newer, more modern systems like SharePoints or Salesforces or ServiceNows, right? Um, and uh, in order to make sure that you have the ability to update all of these legacy systems and these new systems, you do need sort of that layer that can communicate with all of them at a different level. Other sort of issues that I see with a ton of different, disparate systems is training, right? You have to train everyone how to use these 50 different things. And if there's not like a one good centralized location where you can map out these processes and explain to all of your users like where things are located, um, and then how to use them, it training becomes kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, no, those are good points. Katie, specifically when you're talking about those, old versus new systems, even on some of the newer systems, the Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce's, ServiceNow's, almost all of these systems have some sort of automation or workflow capabilities in each one of them separately. Um, can you talk to maybe like what are some of those common issues that come around with that? And if there's like that benefit of having a single point, single center of excellence to base those automations and workflows out of instead of doing, 10% in ServiceNow and 20% in Salesforce or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I've personally used the automation tools inside of like Box, Salesforce, ServiceNow myself. And they're great. They can get what you need done, like I'd say 80% of the time. But if there's that 20% where you actually need to, you know, make any kind of a connection to another system, maybe from SharePoint to Salesforce, right? Or from SharePoint to Box, right? That is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. Most of these automation services inside of each one of these platforms is specifically designed and uniquely tailored for that service. So making those call outs to other services is difficult to do. But if you can have one sort of centralized location for all of your automation where you can easily connect to all these systems, that's 100% the easiest way to actually automate a certain process. If you think of something as simple as like onboarding, right? We've all gone through an onboarding process. Like what does that look like? It's usually like a form you have to fill out. There's a contracting portion of it, right? There's probably some redlining. Then once there's like an e-sign, then from there maybe there's user provisioning for all the services they need. Maybe they need to get a user added to like Azure Active Directory or something like that. All of this would not be easily accomplished with any just one of these services. It's like automation um, service, right? So having something that can sit above everything and then automate it, you know, just one full process end to end, that's the easiest way. Anything you want to add, Dan?
Yeah, I think everything you said, I mean, all great points on it. And really kind of looking at the different tools, it's really nice like on those specific systems to be able to, be able to kind of quickly do something and kind of get some of those just kind of smaller processes kind of done. But yeah, when you have that heavy lift, it's really, I mean, it really is critical to kind of have the right tool in the belt for doing that and building out that process center of excellence, like you mentioned, Brian. It really is kind of the go-to way that we're seeing organizations going to these days. Specifically, just because it is so important, and companies are really kind of focused on the bottom line right now and being able to really streamline their costs to be able to make their employees more efficient and to really kind of be able to get beyond some of these kind of blockades that they have with process that things that should take 15 to 20 minutes are taking 2 to 3 weeks. And having those types of automations built out and having them kind of all in one centralized place is really helpful. One other kind of pivot to that is the having an understanding of your processes. I'm going to go back to that, and I mentioned it kind of in the first question, but really being able to kind of understand what you're doing before you build these out is absolutely critical. Like mapping out, understanding the systems that you're working with, understanding the processes, and then using that to kind of develop your plan on what you're going to be automating. Because really, at the end of the day, you can build your automations. You can build it with workflow tool like Nintex. You can do some custom dev if you need to. If you want to spend money on kind of hiring developers and building something custom in house, you can use some of these other tools. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what your end target is, it's a lot harder to kind of be able to measure your results and to be able to accurately kind of predict where you're going. So having that centralized process center of excellence and then having that kind of foundational understanding is really critical for being able to kind of be successful in the process journey.
Yeah. I think too, though, It also comes down sometimes to a matter of ownership. I mean, Katie, your example, HR examples are always really good here. When you onboard someone, you're touching somebody in IT, you're touching someone in the HR. There might be a couple other departments that you're having to kind of interweave with. And if each department has a different piece of software with different automations in there, not only is it hard to kind of put those together, but from a responsibility standpoint, you have IT is now responsible for 10% of that whole business process. So you've really just chopped that business process up into these minute kind of little areas that can do some finger pointing when something goes wrong versus having one big master thing to get there. So, no, I think those are really good points. Just going into to ideas of what it might be best practices into something that's a little bit more practical. So, for businesses that have data that lives in these multiple locations, what are some like concrete options that a company has to make that are business critical decisions when they're in that kind of an area? And I'll throw this out to either or Dan or Katie here.
Yeah, I can hop in. So just from a practical perspective, I think we already kind of mentioned a few, where just kind of understanding those processes. Um, but that's not really answering your question fully, because it's like, yeah, we could map these things out, we could get our data journey diagrams, we can get all of that. Um, but really understanding what the kind of workload's going to be for it. Um, Kind of going back to a bit more on topic on what this what we are targeting and the APIs and some of the other pieces to that is understanding uh, what the capabilities of the system we're interacting with are, what kind of tooling they have available from like a developer perspective that we can work with, whether that's web services, if it's like SOAP, if it's REST, do they have any open API files, anything that we can take on that side? Getting kind of into this deep tech on that on some of this, but knowing what kind of integration layers they have is really kind of important. And one of the things that we see very commonly with our customers and with using our tools is either using like web services and kind of building the integrations. What's nice with that is you can just having the workflow where you might have one workflow that's building this or that's doing these API calls, and then giving the opportunity for other users to not have to know how to interact with an API. So basically, you can have it as like a component, and then you have one developer that knows how, or has to worry about the API integration and being able to do that kind of stuff. Or even in our case, as well as some other tools where you can actually build out like actions using, like in our case, in Texas case, the extensions framework, which is basically just a graphical user interface. It looks like actions within the workflow. Again, you're just mapping out the API at that point. So with that, what that does and what that enables us to do is to create those workflows, create that kind of centralized process for, like going back to Katie's example with the employee onboarding, where you can have one process that's built out, one centralized process that is going to update Active Directory. It's going to send the offer letter. It's going to submit an IT ticket within ServiceNow or some other system where you might, or Zendesk or something else where your IT team might be living. And it's going to be touching all those different data points that are going to really be where people do their work. And the most important thing is to be able to kind of build these integrations and build these workflows in ways, and build these processes in ways that you're not necessarily impacting the user's work in a way that you're forcing them to go to something else, but you're helping to augment what they do on the day to day and really provide them with the ability to do their work more efficiently. So not necessarily learning a whole new system, but yeah, maybe they have to submit a form. That's not a huge lift, but submitting a form and then having everything on the back end makes it substantially easier from an end user perspective to really be able um, to jump in and be able to get things done.
Yeah, on top of that, because of how easy we make it, a lot of our actual workflow designers are line of business guys. They're just power users. They're not IT, they're not developers, right? You don't have to be a developer to do that. The great thing about the extensions framework is once you actually build that connection, there's nothing you really have to do again in the future unless something drastically changes and that API is no longer supported. So you build it the one time, and then all of your end users will be able to then come in and then just drag drop that onto the designer, and then they'll be able to use it straight away. And they'll be familiar with what it is. It's not like it's a service they don't already use. Like, oh, let's say they need to add a new file to Box, right? Or Dropbox, some system like that. Like you know how to do that. You just click and point, I want this folder, I want it to be called this, and then this is what, during the point, in this point of the workflow, I want it to upload this file. And then we can very easily do that. A lot of, companies also do have legacy systems, like we mentioned earlier. And, when like moving anything, right? Like upgrading somebody from SharePoint, on-prem to SharePoint Online, for example, which happens pretty frequently, in our customer base. Um, it's hard. It takes years to do. Takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and that's not always an option for some companies. So you really need a tool that's flexible enough to be able to touch on all of these different types of data that you guys might have.
Yeah, I know that I used to work for a public school system, one of the largest public school systems in the United States, and that was always a constant problem for us. Is how do I build out moving the data and the process between something that needed to be done with very, very limited resources. And I think that's one of the things that I really like about Nintex is it's one thing to say as a product you have 10,000 integrations and it's with all these systems that go out there. But when you look into it and look under the hood, that integration for that other piece that you needed to hook up to doesn't quite do it the way you want. And really what you are looking for, and Nintex has it kind of in spades here, is the ability to have a framework to build out the connector to whatever you need it to be, a legacy system or anything else, but also in the fashion that you need it, getting the data the way you want it and pushing that back and forth. I think that's a much more optimal way to do it. And it actually wastes a lot less time. And you can bring in those citizen developer type people rather than just having to either uh, go out and get some other company to do it for you or to employ a whole bunch of programmers in-house to get that done.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because a lot of times what we do see is companies that are coming to us that have sunk thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars into these development projects that have gone on for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years in one case that I've seen. And what happens with those is that they're constantly needing updates. There's constantly needing code reviews, changes, these kinds of things. When building out these systems and building out like these integrations, it's a constant work in progress. And if you're going to be pouring money into it, chasing good money with bad is not, or bad money with good is not the way to go. So having that kind of citizen developer approach, and I mean that is to say, I mean there is a place for custom development out there, and there is always going to be a place for custom development, but for a lot of these kind of broader, wider kind of issues that we see within organizations, you can solve a lot of the issues that you typically would be just kind of pouring money in across the entire across trying to solve them across your entire organization by just hiring custom developers. You can actually solve a lot of that by just having it kind of be done with people who are living it day to day, who actually know these processes kind of right. I mean, they're living them. So I think those are all great points there.
Yep. Yep. Well, I think we're going to wrap up here. I think we just scratched the bare surface of what we can be talking about with these integrations, APIs, and how you move that data back and forth. I'd love to have you guys back again. I want to thank both Katie and Dan for contributing. Their knowledge is paramount to getting this stuff done and doing it correctly. If anyone out there, if you go, this has sparked your ideas or questions that you might have, I encourage you to visit our website at nintex.com. Reach out to us with any questions you might have, both on the website, or you can hook up with any one of us on LinkedIn as well. If we didn't cover some of the stuff you had, if not, I look forward to another version of Process Pro in the future. And thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Katie.
Bye.